Hi.
Hi.
Want to say hi to the camera?
Yeah.
Say hi.
Hi.
What are you having to eat?
A Nutrigrain bar, and it's apple.
Apple. This video is not sponsored by Nutrigrain. Hey everyone, today I wanted to take a minute and talk about 5 different ways that you can use phonics poems in your primary classroom. I started using phonics poems back in 2010 when I was teaching first grade in Las Vegas, and once I started using them on a regular basis, not only did I see how much fun my students had engaging and interacting with the poems, but I also just recognized how versatile they really can be. So today's video I'm going to highlight just a quick 5 ways you can use them in your own classroom to help students with literacy. If you've seen my videos before, then welcome back, and if you are new here, my name is Susan Jones. I am a former first grade and K-2 literacy teacher who now spends a lot of time here on YouTube making videos just like this to help teachers just like you. So if you have used phonics poems in the past, or if you're excited to learn about them, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and let's get started. The first way to use phonics poetry is probably the most obvious, and that of course is to learn and review new phonics patterns. After I explicitly teach a new phonics pattern or a new sound to my students, I will show them what letters make that sound. I will show them some words that we can decode with that sound in it. This is when I then go ahead and give them a phonics poem that highlights this sound. When students have a phonics poem like this one right here, you will see that at the bottom right corner, there is the target sound that students will be working on. And of course, this aligns with the phonics pattern that I just taught them in class. I will usually go ahead and read the poem aloud for students to track and follow, and I tell them as I'm reading this, I want them to be on the lookout for words with those phonics patterns. With the highlighter in hand, students will go through and find those words and highlight them so we can make note of them later. Now, this is definitely not the only time we would read a poem like that. Like I said, I would read it aloud. I would usually have them echo read it. We would choral read it together, and then oftentimes we would even partner read it, all within that first day. So students are getting to read that poem at least 2 or 3 times. Quick note, if you want to see how I explicitly teach phonics in the classroom, check out this video after this one. Once students have independently gone through and highlighted all of the words, we will read that poem again one last time and record all the words we found up on the board to make sure we didn't miss any, and it gives them another opportunity to read those words with the phonics pattern in them. The second way I love to use phonics poems in the classroom are to help students with their visualizing skills. Now, I love using poetry to help students visualize because within poetry, there's all sorts of great imagery and funny little sayings and things that can happen within a poem, just like a regular story. But I find that with poetry, especially as we read it through a few times, students are really able to make a clear picture of what's happening inside their brains. Now, the phonics poems I'm sharing in this video are all ones that I created to help my own first grade students and kindergarten and second grade students to make sure that we were teaching the phonics patterns that I was regularly going over in the classroom. So I made these particularly to cover those patterns, but I was also very thoughtful about the way the poem actually went. I wanted to make sure that not only did it include those phonics patterns, but that it was fun and engaging for students to be able to read. So I showed you in the last example one of my full-page phonics poems, and in that unit I also have every single poem as a half-page sheet here with a visualization box for them to read, reread, and then draw what they saw. I also love to use these visualizing sheets as a quick way to make sure students are actually comprehending what they are reading. So not only can they decode those words with the phonics pattern in it, but especially after they've read it a few times, do they actually know what the words are saying? Okay, the third way I love to use phonics poems in the classroom is to help students increase their fluency. Now, can you even talk about fluency without talking about poetry? I'm sure you can, but why would you want to? Because poems are just so much fun for students to read. They have rhyme, they have rhythm. Students can use proper intonation as their voice naturally goes up and down as they read the poem. In all of the phonics poems that I created, I made them with a natural rhyming sequence so students can get used to the words that are coming in a more predictable way. We also know that with fluency, students need to read something more than one time. In fact, the more times they read it, the more fluent they become in what it says. So these phonics poems are perfect for that because we are reading the poem 1, 2, 3 times just on the first day. As students continue to practice reading that poem throughout the week, the more fluent and more comfortable they become reading that poem, so much so that they might be able to read it aloud to a partner or read it aloud in front of the class, and they can practice their fluency that way too. The fourth way I like to use phonics poems in the classroom is to put them at a literacy center. Now, all of my poems are set up in the exact same way, where you can either use that visualization sheet or you can just use the one-page sheet, and students will go ahead, read the poem, and find that phonics pattern. But there's also another part that I include for each and every poem, and that is a nonsense versus real word fluency sheet. Up at the top here, you can see that students will write down the words that they found with that particular phonics pattern from the poem, and then they can also practice decoding both real and nonsense words with that phonics pattern. This is a great literacy extension to continue practicing that phonics pattern, but in a few different ways. So here, students will actually color in the real words that they find, and the nonsense words they will not color in, and at the bottom they will write down how many they found. Because of the predictable nature of this type of activity, once students get the gist of how to read the poem, highlight the phonics patterns, and then work on the nonsense and real words section, they can go ahead and put it in a literacy center and they could do it themselves. I'd probably only do this as a review pattern. Maybe if you've taught something in class and you didn't use a phonics poem with it, then you could throw it in that literacy center and they would be able to better decode it. You don't necessarily want to do this with a brand new phonics pattern that you haven't explicitly taught yet. And the fifth way I like to use phonics poems in the classroom is to have students add them to their book bins for independent or partner reading. As I continue to introduce and read these new poems throughout the year, I really like to have students keep them in a poetry journal that we continue to look back upon whenever students have some free time to read. As we introduced new poems throughout the year, we would actually keep ours in a poetry journal where students could reference back throughout the year during that independent reading time. And in my classroom, we actually had book bins that we would use all year long where students would go and they could read any of the books they want during our reading workshop time. I strongly encourage my students to keep their poetry journals inside their book bin, because since we have read the poems over and over, it would be a great place for students to take a little break from their reading and maybe go into the phonics poems and reread some of the ones that they really enjoyed. Not only is this great for fluency, but it is also great for some of your lower readers who maybe if you're not working with them at that point in time, they can read something that they are familiar with. And in the same sort of way, I would also encourage students to use their poetry journals when doing partner reading, because both of the students in our class have read those poems before, so they can practice reading it line by line. They can listen as one student reads it and then the other student can, and they can help each other self-check and self-correct as needed because they're both familiar with the poems. It was great to have as another option for reading, and again, we're constantly adding to it throughout the year, so it never stays the same. As I mentioned earlier, all of the poems I share in this video are actually from this unit right here. It's my phonics poetry unit over on TPT, and it has 79 original poems to focus on 79 different phonics patterns. Now, I get requests all the time to add new poems to the unit for different phonics patterns that you might be working on in your classroom. And so each year I like to add about 5 to 10 new poems. This past year I did not, because I actually focused on taking all of the poems and making them digital, which they are. You can grab them all in Google Slides, all in that same download. But this year I do plan, I go through all of my Q&As and I go through my requests. And like I said, I pick about 5 to 10 new poems that I add to the unit. So that is my plan this summer. If you want to start implementing phonics poems in your classroom, I will go ahead and link that unit down in the description below so you can take a look. So now I want to know, do you use phonics poems in your classroom? Have you used them in any of these ways? Or do you have a different way that you use them? Let me know down in the comments below. You know, if you've been around for a while, that I love reading the comments. I gain so many new ideas, and so do other teachers that read the comments down below. So feel free to share your thoughts. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you did, make sure you're subscribed to my channel and click that bell. That way you get notified of every new video that I upload. See you next time. Bye.